Yo, what is up, everybody? How we doing? Happy Tuesday. Good afternoon. Welcome to this show. If you've been watching our channel for a while, you've seen that every so often, when we get the itch to do it, we do something that's called a fireside chat. These are irregular shows, longer shows, basically just like longer conversations that we have with people about anything and everything. And that's what we have today. We've got a fireside chat with Knightscope. Well, not with the company, with the chairman and CEO of the company, William Santana Lee. He's here with me right now. We're going to spend the next hour or so just hanging out, talking about William and his background, about Knightscope, about their business, about their industry, about their growth, about their their offering that they're doing right now. So we got a lot to get to in the next hour or so. So everyone watching in the chat, I'm going to do my very, very best to keep my eye on the chat throughout the next hour. Please ask questions. I will do my very best to ask the questions that I see from you. So this is as much for you really as it is for us here. So that being said, I'm ready. You're ready. The roadmap is wrapping up, and they're going to send everyone over our way. So they're ready. Let's go ahead and let's get going here. All right, now before I bring on Mr. Lee, let's just play a quick intro video. If you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, who is a Knightscope, what is a Knightscope, you don't even know what that word is, well, watch this video and then you'll find out.
8 years ago, when we began our mission to make the United States of America one of the safest countries in the world, we were told we were out of our minds. It was impossible. It was too big of a goal, and they said it would never work. But we kept our heads down, worked hard, and pushed forward relentlessly. That's why I'm so excited to announce that Knightscope has commenced its offering of up to $40 million of Class A common stock with the intent to list our shares on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol KSCP immediately following the closing of the offering. And you can invest now before Wall Street does. Knightscope builds autonomous security robots that have been operating 24/7 for over 1 million hours across multiple time zones, winters and summers. Over 28,000 people have already invested over $100 million in the company to make it all happen. Now that we intend to list our shares on NASDAQ immediately following the closing of our offering, we're going first to our supporters to get in on the shares ahead of Wall Street. Main Street first, Wall Street second. We want our true supporters to help build the first chapter in Knightscope's history, to be the ones who help write the second chapter as we enter the public markets. The patriots, the technologists, the law enforcement professionals, the teachers, the students, the judges, the lawyers, the veterans. Thousands of Americans from all walks of life, and that means you. Over the past few years, we've made tremendous strides, going from, quote, an impossible idea to operating our security robots across the country 24/7. This public listing on NASDAQ will not be the end of that journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, and we want you to join us in writing that history. Invest in Knightscope today, and don't forget, long Knightscope and short the criminals.
I gotta say, I gotta hand it to them on the slogan. One of the all-time best slogans probably in the history of slogans. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. William Santana Lee, the chairman and the CEO of Knightscope. Here he is.
Hey, Spencer, how are you? They told me we're on for an hour, like 10 rounds. We're ready to go?
It's going to be a marathon. No, this is going to be like super casual. We're just going to hang out. We're going to talk and see where the conversation takes us. I have some semblance of a plan, but I usually always divert from my own plans.
Hey, we're always prepared over here, Spencer. Like, we're ready for next Christmas. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I see you've got the tree there. You guys are like 11 months ahead of the game.
On top of it, man.
Toronto the Great question. Let's address that question right now. He said, ticker, please. I'll just let William answer that question.
Ticker, please, shall be at the end of the month. KSCP on NASDAQ. It's not trading just yet. We're in the middle of a public listing. So we just announced on December 1st that we'll take about 6 weeks to market the offering in public, as opposed to a typical S1 IPO where you would do 2 weeks behind closed doors. We're really focused on our awesome 28,000 investors that help write the first chapter of Knightscope. And so that's what we're up to. And the offering will close here shortly. And then at the end of the month, we'll start the trade.
All right, so I put the link in the chat to the offering. I'll be putting that in there throughout the next hour. But before we get into all that and the offering and all that, I just want to back up for a second. William, you're kind of a Detroit guy, right? Benzinga, we're in Detroit. You're kind of a Detroit guy as well. You were at Ford back in the day.
Detroit, Rock City.
Nice.
Yeah, I spent 10 years there. Got allergic to snow, so I had to move out to California. Mm-hmm. But I'm very grateful for working at Ford Motor Company was one of the best training grounds for what I'm doing now. Yeah, I got an ability to work on 4 different continents, every functional area, from component system and vehicle engineering to manufacturing rationalization to mergers and acquisitions, a bunch of crazy stuff along the way. But it's awesome training ground.
Talk about that journey though. You were at Ford, right? And then what happened? You moved to California, or you obviously left Ford at some point, and I know you didn't go straight from Ford to starting Knightscope. So what was that?
Yeah,
journey?
so we so I think the entrepreneurial bug started my second to last job at Ford. I was director of mergers and acquisitions when at that time we were running around buying everything. And it was pretty exciting. My last job, I was ill-advised. I was an entrepreneur. I convinced the board of directors to release $250 million to me to do a roll-up in the used parts industry. If you don't know what a roll-up is basically buy one company, buy another one, all small, and make one big one. So I bought actually 22 companies in 11 months. I had about 600 employees, doing about 150 million in sales. And at the age of 28 at the time, I was the youngest senior exec at Ford. And that kind of really, you have your own board, your own HR, your own operations. You kind of get that entrepreneurial bug. And since then, worked on a few other startups. But in 2013, founded Knightscope. With my co-founder, Stacy Dean Stevens, and a couple of awesome additional executives, Mercedes Soria and Aaron Lenhart, who've basically been the same management team since when we started the company. So either we're all naive or both, or all 4 of us rather stubborn.
So, okay, let's talk about that. 2013. What happened? Usually when I talk to an entrepreneur, it's something happened either in their personal lives, in their professional lives, or just in the marketplace. Something had to be the spark to light the match. So in your case, what was the spark to light the match to go and start this company?
Actually, all 3 things that you just mentioned. In no particular order, I think, coming out of Detroit, I think self-driving autonomous technology is going to turn the world upside down. I'm not necessarily in agreement in the path to commercialize the technology. I believe engineers are really good at solving problems with constrained boundary conditions. It's in this box. It's kind of this tall, this high. And we need to kind of iterate and improve things. It's kind of really difficult or slightly dumb assignment to say, hey, let's put a 4,000-pound unmanned vehicle on a public road. No regulatory framework, no safety framework, random time of day, random everything. Please make sure it works 100% of the time and doesn't kill anybody. Yeah. That's, Spencer, that's kind of the aerospace equivalent of I'm going to go to Pluto first. We're not stopping at the moon and we're not stopping at Mars. We're just going to go to Pluto. And so we've taken a decidedly different approach at Knightscope, which is crawl, walk, run. Hey, can we get this to work at 3 miles an hour first before we go venturing off into larger things? And now we've operated, well over 1 million hours. So that was kind of the professional motivation. Second, I was born in New York City. Someone hit my town on 9/11. I'm still profoundly pissed off about it. So the rest of my life, I'm dedicating to better securing the country. The country's over 200 years old. We're on our 46th president. Somehow crime has a $2 trillion negative economic impact on the U.S. every single year, and we kind of shrug our shoulders and say that's okay. It's not okay. Sorry. You have a right to live in a country that's safe. And I believe if Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin or George Washington were to see what we built, which is you have literally a risk of being shot or killed going to work, going to school, or going to the movies, or going to school, like that's not acceptable. So
Yeah.
I'm in it for the long haul. I think we've proven that over the last 8 and almost 9 years now. I think I've got at least 3 decades worth of work in my head that needs to get done to achieve the mission, to see if we can make the U.S. the safest country in the world. And I think the catalyst to wrap it up was, a combination between 9/11, Sandy Hook, and the Boston Marathon bombings. It's like, okay, enough already, and we need to kind of fix this. And we can dive into the why things are broken. But those are basically the three items.
So like in the early days, were you just like bootstrapping your way through this thing? Did you take any outside money? I mean, how does that work? You just everybody has ideas, William. Everybody has ideas. You actually went and started a company based on your idea and your beliefs.
Yeah. So 2013, there's like half a dozen of us. Payroll like zero, and we can't afford an office. We can't afford anything.
Yeah.
It took me 364 days to raise a seed round. Because I was told the following: hey, Bill, you're out of your mind. This will never work. It's hardware and it's software. Too complicated. You should pick one. And physical security is not an investment thesis. You need to go away. And so we got I don't know how many times. I didn't, thank God I didn't keep track. And we kind of decided this still needs to get addressed. I don't care. If you tell us no, or I'm going to go figure out how to force what needs to get done. And we kind of just put our heads down and try to figure out how to raise a little bit of capital to build the most miserable prototype you've ever seen in your life. And then, one thing led to another. And now, we've got a bunch of crime fighting wins, and technology actually works. We're backed by 28,000 people who disagree with all those people that told us no. And we've got clients that also, believe in the technology. So it's been a long road, but it started off pretty rocky.
Wait, you can't just skip it. You just yada through the good part. So the one thing led to another. I mean, come on.
Led to another. Spencer, it's easy. Everyone should start a company. It's like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
All you're doing is having a little drink here and there. Oh yeah, that's a ticker symbol, by the way. So let's see. We couldn't raise any money. Everyone's like, you're out of your mind. We got very lucky and got accepted into a technology accelerator here in Silicon Valley called Plug and Play, who put a roof over our head. And we raised enough money to just build the first prototype's probably too strong of a word. And we won demo day that year. And then a couple of newspapers or periodicals kind of wrote about it, and then the media, started paying a little bit of attention, and then a little bit of money started rolling in for us to be able to get our own office here in Mountain View, California, in heart of Silicon Valley. And we started trying to build a technology. It's really hard. It's a complicated set of technologies. Combination of self-driving, autonomous technology, robotics, AI, and electric vehicles, all into one thing that needs to run 24/7 in the rain at night, with a client down your throat is kind of hard. But we got it to work.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about that product roadmap, right? Like you said, it's extremely difficult. And I've got some images. I bring them up on the screen. But I think, it's worth noting that the products that we're seeing right now, that is not what we're talking about 5 years ago, right?
No, that's the Future K7. This is the multi-terrain version. A lot of our machines today are operating at corporate campuses, commercial real estate, hospitals, casinos, residential, and the like. But in the future, there's places where there's more difficult terrain. So that larger machine is a little bit for the future. The one that you just showed there was at the casino. We've got a number of casino clients that are utilizing the technology across the country,
Right.
including law enforcement agencies. This is one of the ones that we're most proud of. The Huntington Park Police Department hired us for a year. We did rather well. Effectively, according to their statistics, we're able to cut crime in half in the area we're patrolling. And so the chief of police went before the city council and on a unanimous vote was able to get the contract renewed for an additional 2 years, which to me is, really, really strong start.
Nice.
To what I hope will be a very long book. We're just finishing up chapter 1.
So wait, okay. So let's go just back to the products here, because there are several different products that we're talking about. Talk me through like how you work, how you developed. Yeah, I guess the K1 was the first one. So like,
Actually, other way is K5.
I'm sorry,
K3,
K5.
K1.
Okay, so like the K5, right? I mean, talk us through the development of that.
Sure. I think probably one oddity for so my chief design officer is the ex-Ford Motor Company as well. A little bit about the design process. A couple of things to think about. One, it's not a military product. It's not on the battlefield. You need to operate within society. So you have to have enough of a form factor, and it's large enough to kind of intimidate enough for someone who's going to do something nefarious to kind of think twice. But you can't scare the child or grandma, right? So we got to thread the needle here. So it's got to be friendly enough to, bring the kid out of everybody when they see a robot. But at the same time, at 3:00 in the morning in a parking lot, you see this 5-foot tall, 400-pound machine roaming around on its own. No one's remote controlling it. There's no one around. The strobe light's going. It says security on the side. I have no idea what this thing does. I think I'm going to steal the car down the street and not here, right? And that's basically what's been happening. So we've wanted to provide a form factor that provide a little an ability to provide that, not intimidation, but an ability to just get someone to do a double take, no different than seeing a cop car on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I think the other part of the design process that most folks don't think about is if Aaron and I were designing a car, like we've been through it enough times, we kind of know where the fence line needs to be, what the DLO looks like, the wheelbase, the overhangs. There's so many regulations. You kind of know from a sketch what a car is going to look like. It's kind of really hard for this because you have no reference point, no proportions, no anything. So in the early days, we had to use some wood and some, materials to just mock something up because you don't know how big it is. These days, Aaron actually built out a virtual design studio so we can put on the VR goggles and kind of walk around the machine. Wow. So we can, better understand the proportions and the like, because there's no reference points. But we were worried. The first machine we put out was May, for Star Wars fans out there, May the 4th of 2015. And we didn't know if this was going to go over well. Would society allow us to do this, to actually take the character off the movie screen and we're going to put it in real life and have it patrol out there? But, Spencer, once I saw, families driving 4 hours to go take a picture with their kids in the robot, or girls leaving their lipstick, kisses on the robot, and so many robot selfies, I'm like, okay, we're a startup. We don't have it perfect, but I think we're at least in the right quadrant. And so far it's proven to be as such.
I'm just curious, those early conversations, so you move past the investor hurdle, right? You were able to get some money. You're able to at least get some sort of a minimum viable product out there. But then you got to go and sell that thing, right? I'm just curious what the early conversations were like with police departments, et cetera, when you approached them, because I can't imagine they were approaching you.
So we have a lot of ex-law enforcement, SWAT commanders, military folks, security professionals on the team. And most of them will tell you there's always a massive level of disbelief and a lot of education required. Because if you think about it, and this is going to sound a little crude, but, an officer basically gets lied to every day. no, I wasn't speeding. No, I didn't steal that thing. No, I didn't kill her. I mean, there's all those others. No, no, no. And so they usually start with, hands crossed. Don't, complete disbelief of, the thing that was on the movie screen is now sitting in front of me. So the early days was difficult. Even to this day, we're still educating a lot of folks on the technology because there's a sense of disbelief. Like, okay, who's remote controlling this? Obviously, you guys are controlling it from. No, it's roaming around on its own. But then when they start seeing, it actually be able to help folks in society, I think that's when the light bulb turns on. And we're having a lot of discussions with the federal government and a lot of prospective clients where people are like, I see that it worked at XYZ casino. Getting the second, third, fourth, fifth casino is a lot easier. It's worked at XYZ hospital. The next hospital is an easier conversation to have, and so forth and so on.
Who was your first client?
That year we had a bunch of proof of concepts. We had a semiconductor company, and then we had a mall was the first one. And I think there was one more in there, escapes me. But I'll tell you a little funny story, Spencer. So we were operating in our office, and we got it finally kind of working, like kinda, emphasis on kinda. So we're like, all right, let's put it outside. And we're worried, like, is someone going to take it? Is somebody's going to mess with it or whatever? So we would literally sleep at the office and take shifts like every 3 or 4 hours. Okay, you got the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. You get the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And we would just sit there trying to make sure everything's running. And then when we got to the first deployment, we ended up, we got our own van or whatever. And then the team would end up sleeping in the van in the parking lot to make sure everything was operating. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
Did you have a plan for if someone pulled up and just threw into the back of their truck and drove off? I mean, did you think that far ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't happened yet. I'm sure it'll happen one day. It's kind of a little awkward. It's 400 pounds, so trying to.
Oh, all right. That's not
lifting
that
is
easy.
a little odd.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
A bunch of networks in New York are like, hey, it's like Wednesday. Hey, can you get on the plane and be on network news on Friday morning and just bring the robot with you on the airplane? I'm like, no, I don't think you're understanding what's going on here. But yeah, so there it is. So, that's 400 pounds, 5 feet tall. It does have GPS on it, a bunch of sensors. It generates over 90 terabytes of data a year that no human's going to be able to process. I think the somewhat humorous and not humorous thing is, we've got all the evidence to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. We have and we will. And, just like you probably shouldn't, spray paint a police car or knock over a law enforcement motorcycle, like you probably should leave the security robot alone, because we've now put north of, I think, half a dozen people behind bars, including some folks with, 3 felony counts, and the district attorney just in complete shock and awe of the quality of evidence that we were able to submit in a court of law.
So, okay, so maybe we should talk actually about, like, the K1, the K3, the K5, the K7, right? What do they do? Where are they? What are they actually doing? And also, what are they not doing?
Okay, let's start with the not, because I think Hollywood has brainwashed everyone over the last 30 years as to what a robot can do. And then, like, up here somewhere, and it's going to scan your brain waves, and it's going to make you coffee, and it's going to do everything the Jetsons said, and kind of like reality is down here somewhere. Right. So these are intended to basically two things. One, provide a physical deterrence. Just being there can stop a lot of negative behavior. No different than, however fast you're going or not going, Spencer, on I-95 or whatever it might be. If there's a cop car on the side of the road, you're probably going to pump those brakes regardless of what, pace you're going. Very similar. So that's kind of the first thing. That's why one of the reasons why they're a bit larger. The second is just to give the officers and guards eyes, ears, and voice on the ground, and give them, unprecedented situational awareness is what we call it. So an officer or guard can speak through the machine as if it's a mobile PA system. You've got 360-degree eye level, not the CCTV camera staring at the bald spot on top of your head. But eye level, 360-degree HD live streaming and recorded video. The machines can detect a person. So let's say at Benzinga, they don't want anyone waltzing around your facility between 10 o'clock at night and 4 in the morning. Okay, if the machines detect a person, they can send an alert, and that can be an email, a text, or a phone call, or a notification on the user interface. We can detect the person. So a lot of facial recognition is used for our casino clients where, hey, he was counting cards last week. We threw him out. This one's, dealing drugs. This one's a felon or whatever. And they just upload all those people of interest, I'll say. And they can be alerted to be able to better secure the facility. We can do that with or without a mask. We can also do, for the K1 stationary, you can do elevated body temperature. So you stand 3 feet away from the machine for about 5 seconds. It can tell you if perhaps you might be running a fever. We can run a thermal scan of an environment. So sometimes it's really hard at night, even with the best cameras, to see what the heck's going on. But if you run a thermal scan, you can see that, oh, there's actually a truck back there, or it can be really helpful for forensics or investigations. We can read several hundred license plates a minute. So let's say you fired someone last week and it didn't go well. You can upload their profile pic. You can upload their license plate. And then one last thing is the machine can detect within just north of 400 feet any mobile device in the area. So you can kind of treat your phone as if it's a license plate. And so now the machines are pretty consistent. They're not falling asleep. They're not texting. They will show up, and they're operating 24/7 to give, again, these officers and guards really smart eyes and ears for them to be able to do their jobs much, much more effectively.
So how much of that is self-directed, though? I mean, how much of that is, there has to be like the guard on shift in the booth, sending it a message to do something, a command, or someone back in your office?
The way I like to explain it is, like, are you sitting on your phone all day monitoring what's happening at your house to check the house alarm? No, not really. You want to check it when you get an alert. And that's kind of the way you want to think about it is you told the machines to be on the lookout for these certain things. So for the license plate thing, for example, we can do parking enforcement. I can tell you that vehicle has been sitting in that parking spot for 17 hours, 22 minutes, and 3 seconds, right? And if you're not supposed to leave a car here overnight, or it's not supposed to be here more than 4 hours, or you're parked in the handicap spot, you can get that alert, as opposed to sitting there looking at the camera all day long. Is there someone in that parking spot? Yes or no? Like, that's not what you want humans to be doing.
All right, maybe this isn't so great for anyone that's ever like parked where they weren't supposed to park, and knew they did so because they knew they could get away with it. So, and I'm definitely guilty of that. So,
I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
All right, so 2013, right? You create the company. You get some funding. You're developing products. You're going through. You're signing deals with clients. I'm curious, like, just what is like the size and scope of, a typical Knightscope deal. I'm also curious, like, what that sales cycle is like.
A deal is, so we don't sell the robots outright or the software or anything. It's actually a subscription service.
Okay.
So the hardware, the electrical, the firmware, the telecommunications, the data storage, all that stuff's included. And at an effective price of, let's say, $3 to $9 an hour. And that compares very favorably to a security guard that's unarmed, maybe $15 to $35 an hour, depending on what you want him or her to do. An off-duty law enforcement officer, plus or minus, armed, and this varies widely across the country, but about $85 an hour. So we sign annual contracts running 24/7, so they can generate, on average, across all the machines, maybe $70,000 a year. But because it's a machine as a service, I like to say we have luxury automotive per unit economics, meaning you're kind of buying a new Tesla every year, but the margins look more like a software as a service company as we generate revenue over that 5-year period for each machine. Obviously, there's maintenance and support and that sort of thing along the way, but it becomes very economical for our clients and highly attractive for our investors.
Something that just occurred to me in the last couple of days here, as I was thinking about the conversation we were going to have, is, you know, it's not a secret right now that there is pressure in the labor market at the low end of the labor market, right? There's a lot of pressure, right? There's not a lot of job seekers. There's a lot of jobs, but not a lot of job seekers right now, and it's making things difficult for companies that rely on, you know, the low end of the labor scale, such as security guards, right? And I've thought about, and like I think about fast food too. Like fast food, they can't hire, and what's going to end up happening, this is just my theory, is like eventually, like these companies aren't going to just sit back and let the market dictate, you know, their hours. They're going to invest, and they're going to find ways to automate, and they're going to find ways to like get around, you know, having to hire so many people, so it's not a problem in the future. And then once that happens, they're never going to go back. So on the topic of automation there, and this is probably a macro trend for Knightscope, right? Is like, whether it's companies or whether it's municipalities that are struggling to hire, whether it's cops or whether it's just, you know, any security guard or whatever. You know, I can't imagine they're just going to sit back and say, well, we can't find anyone to hire. Well, sucks for us. No, they're going to like figure out other solutions, right? And such as Knightscope, I feel like that's probably a trend. You definitely didn't see that coming, but it's happening now, and I feel like that's probably a trend that's a tailwind for you.
I mean, Spencer, if you would have asked me, you know, 8 years ago, you would be, you know, in the process of taking the company public on NASDAQ, in the middle of a pandemic, and the entire country is focused on reimagining public safety.
Right.
Like, you know, science fiction would never happen, but, you know, kind of here we are. I think I actually give you kind of two different points. One, to build on what you're saying, I think a lot of casinos, for example, were getting a lot of traction is because they literally can't hire the folks out there. Same at hospitals. Like, do you really want to be the guard at the hospital right now? No. You know, are the robots immune to COVID? Yes. So that allows for, you know, a good amount of remote monitoring. I think the counterpoint, or maybe a different way to think about it, is, this might not be popular, but let's go through some math. So why does crime have a $2 trillion negative economic impact on the U.S. every single year? It's literally a hidden tax we all pay in blood, tears, and treasure. Well, there's 1 million security guards. There are 1 million law enforcement professionals, plus or minus. So there's 2 million humans. They're running 24/7, right? So at any given time, you've only got maybe 500,000 humans at one time, trying to secure 328 million Americans across 50 states. Like, to put that in context, the U.S. has maybe 70 million cameras. So you got 500,000 humans trying to secure an entire massive nation, and then you're wondering why it's not working. Oh, and by the way, those 2 million people have the technological equivalent of a number 2 pencil and a notepad to do their job. So I think the first kind of little bit of a different point is there aren't enough guards or officers in the first place, pandemic or no pandemic, in order to do the job appropriately. And they don't have the right tools to do the jobs appropriately.
Yeah.
So if we were able to add 1 million security robots out there to help the 2 million officers and guards do their jobs more effectively, you know, maybe we'd have a shot to make a massive dent in the problem. And I think that's kind of the way we look at it. You mentioned the fast food industry. You know, if I recall correctly, you know, in the security industry, you're looking at 100 to 400% employee turnover rates. Like, this is worse than the fast food industry. Like, literally every 3 months, a guard's, you know, hired and then quits, right? So now you have to really think, is that a job? Is that really what someone aspired to do? Why couldn't we just turn the whole conversation upside down? Why can't we promote that security guard? What if you gave her, you know, here's 7 robots, here's an app, they now all work for you, and now you have some tools to do your job more effectively, and perhaps we can pay you more appropriately, and you can cover a lot more ground in a shorter period of time. right? That's a completely different way to think about it. And then lastly, Spencer, I would kind of assert that, as a country, we got things. I love our country, but it's lopsided in this one regard, or strategically flawed. So the Department of Defense has an almost $800 billion budget, one person in charge, the Secretary of Defense. And we give our 2+ million troops every level of capability you might ever imagine, or even unable to imagine. And there is a Northrop Grumman, a Lockheed Martin, a General Dynamics that builds whatever widget a soldier might need in a theater of war. The flaw in this whole mess is the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Department of Justice have no federal jurisdiction over 19,000 law enforcement agencies and 8,000 private security firms. There's no one in charge. There's no risk capital. There's no innovation process. And that's why we find ourselves in the mess that we are, where we have a society that, you going to work, going to school, literally, comes with the risk of being shot or killed. And I don't believe that's the society that our founders expected us to build.
So, William, let's talk about some of the apprehensions of which there are. There are several, I think, to be expected anytime you bring, a new kind of product is brought to market. Everyone is sort of giving it the side eye a little bit, right? So the first one of them we kind of already hit on a little bit, which is the surveillance, right, and the monitoring. But that's probably the first thing I think of, right? Is whoa, robots patrolling, the parking lot outside our office, right? Are they gonna store my I don't know. They're gonna just store my face in there. Not that my face isn't already in the government database because I have a driver's license, so it already is, I'm sure. But I think what talk us through that apprehension there.
Yeah, sure. The first point is the media talking point is all true. The robots are coming. They're going to kill everyone and take everyone's job.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of silliness is beyond me. I mean, if you were to rewind to when electricity first came online, right? That's the work of the devil. I've seen it kill people. We shouldn't touch that, right? And then, anything from an ATM, you're never going to see a bank teller in the rest of your life, to, pick whatever subject you like that society gets fascinated with. 5G is going to kill everybody. It's this every 10, 15, 20 years, we go through this, hysteria of this thing's going to be really bad. And, what ends up happening is not that. It's
Right.
not having a good understanding of what the capabilities are, and then not communicating, to be fair to the media and society. I think one lesson learned now that we've been through 6 winters and 6 summers, operated all across the country from Hawaii through Texas to Rhode Island, is if you don't have any manners or etiquette to properly introduce yourself, you are going to run into the problem you're citing.
Yeah.
So, for example, we had a property developer want us to put a robot in I think it was 350 single-family home subdivision, and we're like, hey, I think we should tell the community that this robot's going to be there.
Yeah.
No.
Probably a good idea.
Don't need to do that, right? And everything that you imagine that could go wrong after went wrong, right? Hey, that thing is monitoring my wife's whatever she's watching on TV, and every assertion that you can make. And so what we had to do was emergency town hall meeting, all right, let's get everyone and the HOA together. This is what the robot does. This is why it's here. And now that you understand that, all in favor of keeping the robot, and then you're all good, right? So Now what we try to counsel our incoming clients is, please, we need to introduce ourselves to the tenants, the faculty, the parents, the community, whoever it might be, the employees, and then in advance, before the robot shows up, before it starts getting deployed, before the media shows up. This is why it's here. This is what it's doing. Why don't we have a lunch and learn, or some robot cake, or name the robot contest, and that sort of thing. And that stops all of it, because once people kind of understand, they're like, oh, got it. This can actually be really helpful. And there's a track record of it being helpful. And then the opposite happens, Spencer, is the emotional attachment of they named the robot. Now it's their friend, and it ends up with this really interesting bond. That's opposite to where we started this particular part of the conversation.
Well, the next thing you have to do, obviously, is you have to get the robot to talk, right?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Right. Oh, okay. Well,
they do today.
Okay.
So the machines can announce stuff on a pre-recorded basis in multiple languages if needed. So we always work with our clients, depending on what kind of messaging they might need. It might be, hey, it's 2:22 in the morning, you're trespassing, and the authorities are being called, or it can be, the mall's closing in 30 minutes, or please wear your mask, or whatever it might be. Make sure your construction hat, your hard hat's on, or whatever safety protocols they might have. So they actually do talk today, and obviously will improve over time.
All right. So the other big hesitancy, the other big question, obviously, is you being a law enforcement technology company. Obviously, coming off of the last year and a half, which has been very, very turbulent on the law enforcement front and the social justice front. I'm not even really sure, to be frank, how much has even changed since the summer of 2020, but that's besides the point. Did the summer of 2020 and all those protests and the discussion of law enforcement and police actions, bringing that to the forefront, did that change anything for you? Have you thought at all about that, the reactions to that, how Knightscope sort of fits into what is an admittedly very, very complex conversation?
Yes, I think in a lot of cases have been for the last 8 or 9 years sick and tired of people arguing and debating and not doing something. So that's why we have the privilege and honor to wake up here in Silicon Valley every morning and actually try to work on a solution to make a difference. I think second, what came out of all that to me is back to my earlier math, which is there are just not enough officers and are stretched beyond belief, and they don't have the tools to do their jobs. In some cases, they're doing stuff they're shouldn't be doing in the first place, but society puts it on them. I think lastly, if they were having some tools to, what's the right word here, disintermediate or de-escalate a situation rather, would probably be helpful, right? If a 911 dispatch can monitor an area remotely and interact with a machine that has, it's a machine. There's no bias or, anything like that. Instead of showing up, guns drawn and escalating a situation, I believe over time, this will be a good way to disintermediate and de-escalate some situations that kind of get out of hand when they shouldn't have in the first place. But again, it goes back to you can't possibly ask these folks who put themselves in harm's way or willing to literally take a bullet for you and your family, and we give them basically no tools. Like, here's a camera and a CB radio and a car that's been cobbled together with Velcro and crazy glue, and off you go. And oh, by the way, there's not enough of you to cover what we want you to do. Like, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah. I see there's more questions in the chat. I promise I will not forget you. I'm not ignoring you. But William, I do want to talk a little bit just about the logistics of this deal, of this offering, right? So let's talk about that for a second, because you are going public on a platform called StartEngine. You're doing what is called a Regulation A offering. It's a Reg A plus offering, actually. It's a little bit different than it's not an IPO, it's not a direct listing, it's not a SPAC, it's a different it's a different avenue, right, to the public market. So talk to us about this process and what it really means for what it means for you, for your company, but also what it means for investors.
Sure. Let me compare and contrast that to what normally happens, and maybe that'll help the folks tuning in. StartEngine is just one of multiple broker dealers that are involved, and no different than any public listing. There's typically multiple bankers and brokers involved. So StartEngine is one of them. So let me start with what kind of normally happens today, and this might enlighten some folks and might annoy others, but basically what ends up happening is an issuer or a company like ourselves would hire a bunch of investment bankers to go raise the capital in an initial public offering or an IPO. And this would be done basically once you've got all the documents in place and all the approvals ready to go. It's done behind closed doors, and the bankers sell those shares in primarily focused on institutional investors. And you'll do a 2-week roadshow again behind closed doors. And Main Street basically doesn't get a chance to participate in most cases. And typically, and this is going to frustrate some people, typically, the bankers don't work for the issuer. They frankly work for the institutions, and they're trying to get the absolute best deal for the institutional investors. And then let's just say, what's the typical story, Spencer? Like, oh, it's supposed to be priced between 14 and 16. Wait. I ended up getting priced at 16. It started trading and it closed at 35. And the media goes nuts. And all the analysts go nuts. And everybody's all happy. And the people that got screwed are the existing investors and the company, because the thing was mispriced. But who got the deal was the institutional investors, where the bankers placed the monies, right? That is not in the best interest of our shareholders, all 28,000 of them that I have a fiduciary responsibility to, and I take that very seriously. So we took down a completely different route, which is to use a different regulatory framework to allow us, instead of doing 2 weeks behind closed doors with institutional investors, why don't we do market it for 6 weeks in public, in sunlight, to primarily Main Street first. Oh, well, I take that back. Existing investors first, Main Street second, and if there's anything left, Wall Street can go last. And that protects the interest of our investors who I work for. I don't work for the banks, and I don't work for the institutional investors. We're happy to have them on our cap table, but you need to do it in a manner that is in the best long-term interest of our shareholders. So this Friday, the 14th, is the targeted subscription closing date, which would be the last day that we accept any more subscriptions in this offering at the $10 a share. And then, because we don't know of any company that's gone public with this amount of investors, we need enough time to clear all the transactions, do all the anti-money laundering, bad actor suitability checks, and all that good stuff. And so hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have our listing day, and that's when the escrows get released. The bankers will release the funds to us. We'll in turn release the securities through our transfer agent to our investors. And if folks miss out on that, then they can buy it on the open market under ticker symbol KSCP at the end of the month.
I love seeing the chyrons on CNBC or whatever, the day after an IPO, stock pops on IPO debut, and you see it's down from the open, and you're like, it popped. What do you mean it popped? I didn't get the pop. Did you get the pop? I didn't get the pop. It's already down.
The whole thing's rigged, and I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail for saying that, but it's kind of reality.
Yeah.
And the worst thing for an issuer too is it was priced at 14 to 16. There wasn't a pop, and it closed at $16.50 or $17.
Right.
That means it was priced appropriately.
Yeah, but that's not good. That's not good, William. That's not good.
Oh my God! It traded flat. It's terrible.
Was disaster. That's a disaster.
Okay, I'm getting too old for this. I'm not going to play this game.
Yeah. All right. So again, the links to that are in the chat and description. Okay, now I want to go to the chat. There was a question. Ask William if Knightscope is a takeover target down the road. Okay.
I guess there's two answers. One, as an officer of the company, I have fiduciary responsibility to all our shareholders, and with the support of the board, would have to review any and all opportunities, right? So that's kind of first. Second, the country's over 200 years old, as I said. We're in our 46th president. No one's fixed this problem. Like me selling the company to who is going to give me the confidence that they'll actually make the US the safest country in the world? Like I have close to zero, if not negative confidence that that'll happen. So I think the question is kind of a different way to think about it. I've bought a lot of companies in my life. My CFO has bought a lot of companies in her life. I think it probably the question is the other way around: is how acquisitive would Knightscope be, provided that we have the market cap or currency to buy some interesting things. I live here in Silicon Valley. It's literally 20,000 startups here. 95% of startups fail. There's a bunch of different interesting engineering teams we might want to acquire, or sales teams, or interesting technologies that could help the country. So I think it's probably the other way around, as opposed to us being bought by someone.
And then there's another question. There was a couple more questions. So one of them was, what are you doing about the privacy of the data you do collect?
Great question. So two things to think about. One, we operate in public areas, so the concept of privacy kind of doesn't really apply. Like we're not in someone's conference room or restroom, or going down the inside someone's hotel or what have you. So that's the first thing. The second thing, to avoid any nefarious, silly things happening ever, contractually, the way we set things up is all of the machine data. So the machines generate a massive amount of data, right? All the machine data, so the health of the machine, the battery cell temperature, whatever it might be, all that's owned by Knightscope. The security data that's related to that actual client is owned by the client, not by us. So that contractually sets things up so that the next question from another investor is going to be, how are you going to monetize all this data? What are you going to do to sell it to Google and Facebook? Yeah, not happening. We're not doing that. That's not going to help secure the country, nor instill confidence in the technology with the general public. So each client owns their own data. And in some cases, we might ask the client to be able to utilize the data to train our algorithms to improve, which usually happens, and not an issue. But I think that should instill some confidence going forward.
Let's talk about your production for a second, right? I mean, what are your production capabilities for this thing, and where are they produced?
Sorry about the AI canine dog behind me, Leo. So production. So one of the things pre-COVID, what ended up happening is people come through Knightscope headquarters and they're like, "Hey, who designed all this stuff?" We did. Who engineered all the software? Mechanical, electrical, firmware. Like who? We did. Where in China did you get these built? And I just want to come over. Let's go next door here. And so we design everything, we engineer it, we physically build the machines ourselves, and we deploy and support them. So made in the US by Americans. And, for us, the production pattern kind of looks like a plant I helped build in Brazil for Ford Motor Company. General Motors built a similar plant back in the day, where they had the suppliers do most of the raw material conversion.
Okay.
And then the automaker would do the light industrial assembly, end-of-line test, burn-in test, and out the door it goes. And that's basically the profile of what we have. So we don't have everyone's like, where's the assembly plant, the massive line or what have you? And we don't do that. It's a very light footprint. So it's basically a bunch of work cells and a warehouse for us to pull all the stuff together and get it to work. 2/3 to 3/4 of it's proprietary to us. Obviously, we don't make motors and cameras and LiDARs and that sort of thing, but the rest of it's ours.
Theoretically, in the future, that could also be a technology that you sell if that was a thing you're interested in. Edward wants to know if you're looking. I can't imagine why he's asking this, but are you looking for a sales team? Any people on the ground in various cities?
So hopefully my CFO is not on the call. I keep teasing her about this. We've only got a handful of sales folks. And part of the use of proceeds after this public listing is to hire a much larger sales team. My dream, which she doesn't share, is that we should have one sales executive in each state. But yes, if you go to the careers page at Knightscope.com, after the listing, you'll start seeing a bunch of new job openings. We're going to be ramping up on the engineering side, on the sales side, and a bunch of other opportunities there.
Here's a really good question, actually, that just came in from Clayton. I hadn't considered this one yet, Clayton. Nice one. Do you offer the AI software by itself to analyze the data for an existing system? And if not, would you consider that?
First answer is no. We don't. The KSOC and the ASRs, the Knightscope Security Operations Center, the user interface, and the autonomous security robots go hand in hand. So we kind of more in line with an Apple or a Tesla, where everything's kind of integrated. We're not doing app stores and selling, random pieces and parts or licensing things that just doesn't work for us, I should say. I think one internal conversation we've been having on terms of a roadmap is, might we be able to help a client better if we were to ingest all of the fixed cameras that they have in the building and put one user interface for it and combined of the robots and the fixed stuff. It's an internal conversation we're having. It's something worth talking about.
I want to give you the chance, then, William, to satisfy your compliance right now. And what is the biggest risk with investing in Knightscope?
The biggest risk, I guess there's two answers. One, go read the offering circular. The lawyers and the bankers have like a massive long list of all the disclosures and everything. It's a startup. I think for me, said a different way, people ask like, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah. At
this point, and putting all the kidding aside, is it's pure execution risk. At this point, we're past I don't know how to get from A to B. Pretty much almost every issue we have in the building, we can fix with people, cash, and time. So I think we've de-risked a lot, and I've said no to a lot of things that get people annoyed. But I think us being really focused is important, and I think it's pure execution risk. So pressures for, hey, you need to grow faster, not helpful. Like, this is already really difficult. We're going to grow carefully and methodically. The people you hire and the people I'm really lucky to have the direct reports and executive team that we have in place are all seasoned professionals that are highly motivated and dedicated to the success of Knightscope is important. I think that's what it comes down to. It's an execution play at this stage now that we've got it working.
All right, William Santana Lee is the chairman and CEO of Knightscope. There's his name on the screen. I hope you guys enjoyed this fireside chat. You are in the midst of the home stretch here, William. So good luck in the coming days and weeks. And I'm excited to see this whole process play out because, as you said, it's definitely non-traditional. And I'm very, 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 very curious to see how the whole thing goes. So thank you so much for the time today. I'm going to end this fireside chat. I'm just going to replay that video from the intro, guys, in case anyone missed it, which, if you came in late, it has some good information just about what is on, the details of the offering and what we're actually talking about here. But William Santana Lee, thank you for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day, man.
And don't forget, Spencer, long Knightscope, short the criminals.
How could I forget? All right. Have a good one, man. All right. Here's that video, guys. And then once that ends, I'm going to hop off onto our At the Close show. So here we go with that Knightscope video.
8 years ago, when we began our mission to make the United States of America one of the safest countries in the world, we were told we were out of our minds. It was impossible. It was too big of a goal. And they said it would never work. But we kept our heads down, worked hard, and pushed forward relentlessly. That's why I'm so excited to announce that Knightscope has commenced its offering of up to $40 million of Class A common stock with the intent to list our shares on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol KSCP immediately following the closing of the offering. And you can invest now before Wall Street does. Knightscope builds autonomous security robots that have been operating 24/7 for over 1 million hours across multiple time zones, winters and summers. Over 28,000 people have already invested over $100 million in the company to make it all happen. Now that we intend to list our shares on NASDAQ immediately following the closing of our offering, we're going first to our supporters to get in on the shares ahead of Wall Street. Main Street first, Wall Street second. We want our true supporters to help build the first chapter in Knightscope's history, to be the ones who help write the second chapter as we enter the public markets. The patriots, the technologists, the law enforcement professionals, the teachers, the students, the judges, the lawyers, the veterans. Thousands of Americans from all walks of life, and that means you. Over the past few years, we've made tremendous strides, going from, quote, an impossible idea to operating our security robots across the country 24/7. This public listing on NASDAQ will not be the end of that journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, and we want you to join us in writing that history. Invest in Knightscope today, and don't forget, long Knightscope and short the criminals.